Is your vehicle stopping like it should? Does it squeal or grind when you brake? Don't miss out on summer brake deals at O'Reilly Auto Parts.
O'Reilly Auto Parts.
You're listening to the Archaeology Podcast Network.
Hello and welcome to the 5-year anniversary bonus content for the Archaeology Podcast Network. We're a member-supported network, and we thank all of our members who contribute to us to help us make archaeological education free and available to all. Of course, as a member, you do get access to bonus content and lots of extra little goodies. We want to, over the next 5 years, get even bigger with more shows and more content. But we need your help. Wherever you're listening to this, wherever you listen to any of our shows, share it, like it, comment, tell somebody about it, tell anybody about it. That is what makes our lives so much easier, and it helps exponentially when it comes to being in a crowded online world. There are so many amazing independent creators, as well as the ones here on the Archaeology Podcast Network who do absolutely fantastic things. And it's a crime that not more people know about podcasts in general and what they can offer. So, shout it from the rooftops, shout it from the mountains.
Hey APN listeners, it's Jessica Yaquinto. So what is it like to be on the APN? So it's pretty funny because it's real easy to forget that there are people actually listening when you record episodes, because I mean, to me it's just I'm having a really great conversation with somebody and I get to really geek out on that, and then it's funny then to remember that people are actually listening on the other side. So I'll have people, for example, quote things back to me that I've said on the podcast, and I don't even remember that I said it. Funny things like that. But mostly, yeah, it's honestly, it's great being on the APN. It's a nice community, supportive of each other. It would have been really hard for me to start a podcast on my own. So it was nice to have the help of people who had been doing podcasts for years and really could help Lyle and I develop, our audio and make it a lot better. You can tell from our early episodes that it was a little rough in the beginning. So we definitely appreciated getting some help there and improving our audio and our quality in general and things like that. So it's been great. It's been probably, I've said before, like the single best thing that I could have done professionally or for my business, Living Heritage Anthropology, and for the nonprofit that I work in, Living Heritage Research Council, just because it's been huge for networking and really networking in our key area that we work in, and just getting our name out there. So which is funny because, again, I'm not usually the one doing the talking. Mostly I'm interviewing other people, but it still has had a really big impact in that way. Okay, so what is the purpose of our podcast? So Lyle and I, we started this podcast and this podcast being the Heritage Voices podcast, because we just didn't see a place where people could go if they were interested in hearing tribal perspectives on cultural anthropology, archaeology, heritage, CRM, land management. There was just not a place where those voices were really featured. And not just Indigenous, I also really want to make a point of that we also have people from other descendant communities as well, because they also have cultural heritage that needs to be considered when doing this kind of work. So basically the purpose of our podcast is just to take away that excuse of that you don't know where to go if you're trying to make your curriculum more diverse, or if you just don't know about some of these topics that are of interest to Indigenous peoples and descendant communities. Yeah, so that's really the goal of our podcast. What do I see as the future of podcasting about archaeology? Well, first of all, again, I'm a cultural anthropologist. I'm an ethnographer working in the CRM industry, but I'm not an archaeologist. So I always like to point that out. So I don't know exactly necessarily what the future of podcasting about archaeology would be, but I'd like to see it, keep going more in the direction like what we've been trying to do at Heritage Voices, and really diversifying the voices that you're hearing within the field, because it's real easy to just kind of hear the same 10 voices over and over again. So I would like to see podcasting kind of help bring more voices to the forefront, more experts, but also more specifically than just varied voices, also the voices specifically of the people that the field is studying, both, mostly obviously Indigenous in this part of the world, but then the other descendant communities as well, and just a greater diversity in general in who we're hearing from. So I think that, to me, representation is a really important aspect of podcasting, and I'd like to see even more of that in the future of podcasting and archaeology. So people should listen to the APN, because what I like about the APN and podcasting in general is it creates such a human feel to the subjects. So it really, first of all, it makes it easy to listen to. It's not, you're not reading an academic journal. It's really low key, but you can still get really important information, and you can hear it directly from the people that are living those experiences, and especially, like, again, in the case of Heritage Voices, directly from the communities that are usually being studied in cultural resource management. So I think that it just provides an important representation of all those voices, but then also it's just fun, it's low key, it's easy to listen to. It's great for when you're in the car, when you're working out, when you're walking, when you're doing things around the house, just to kind of have something that's intellectually engaging, but also, like, fun. So that's what I like about the APN, and that's why I think other people should listen, and what I hope they'll get out of it. I'm trying to even remember how I heard about podcasting. I mean, Serial is the first one, obviously, that I remember hearing about, but I didn't listen to podcasts for even a long time after that, and honestly, I'm not even sure if I remember exactly how I really started listening. Or I think maybe a friend was recommending podcasts to me, but one of the bigger reasons why I started, I guess, is that when I started living heritage anthropology in 2014? Yeah, 2014. I didn't really know anything about starting a business. I didn't really know anything about business in general, and so podcasts just seemed like a really accessible way to learn about a new topic. So I started listening to business podcasts, and then quickly found the CRM Archaeology podcast and the Archaeology Podcast Network, and started listening. And being an ethnographer, it just really made sense to me. Obviously I do interviews for a living with people, and so it really clicked when I started listening to podcasts, which is why it's kind of funny it took me so long. But yeah, so if you wanted to start your own, I mean, for me, it definitely helped. I did a lot of research online, and then, really sending Chris Webster an email. I didn't even actually necessarily mean to join the APN. Obviously I did, but like when I sent him the email, I just was kind of reaching out to learn more and stuff. And he immediately offered, when he heard about our show, a spot on the APN. And but it was just his help and Tristan's help and everybody's help was so key in really developing the podcast to what it is today. And then I would say, get a good microphone, first of all. I have the ATR 2100. That's really key. But even if you don't have that, I think just figuring out what you want to talk about and who you might want to interview, and really just doing it. And then you figure it out as you go, honestly. One thing that I would really stress for people is trying to make sure that you're being representative. I'm a broken record when it comes to this, of who you have on your podcast. That's really been a main goal since pretty early on for Heritage Voices. We had a couple episodes in the beginning that weren't like this, but since then, every single episode we've made a priority to have an Indigenous or a descendant community person on the episode. And I'm not saying every podcast has to be like that, but at least it would be good for people to, pay attention to the diversity of like gender diversity and ethnic diversity and all of those kinds of things, to make sure that they're really being representative and getting, not just getting an echo chamber going in their podcast, which is also hard though. That's been definitely one of the hardest things for our podcast, is that, for us in choosing to make Indigenous and descendant community voices a priority, it's definitely limited our field that we can pick from. But at the same time, there's plenty of people out there. We're not anywhere near running out of content or people to talk to, like not even anywhere close. So I think in a lot of ways it's shown the opposite, that you really can, and it really, it takes a little bit of effort, but it's not that hard to find a diversity of people. And I think time and trying to be consistent is always a challenge. Like I know, both Lyle and I are very busy, and for him, recording in his home community, it just, the time scale is just different than what we're used to. You don't necessarily just go in and ask somebody for an interview and then do it a couple weeks later. So that's been a bit of a challenge. And honestly, internet, we've been having a little bit of a hard time with the recording software out at Hopi. So that's been another challenge that we're still trying to work through. But the positives of podcasting, like I've said in other recordings, it's just been probably the most important thing I've done for my career. But even that, yes, it's been important networking and blah, 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 but I don't know, just getting to sit down with somebody and talk and hear their story for an hour or two has been such a privilege, and it just forges a bond that it's pretty crazy how tight you can get with somebody after just one podcast interview. It's been a really special experience for me in that way. And just personally, selfishly, I just get to email really interesting people and ask them to come on, and I have a platform that they're interested in sharing in. So I get to nerd out and have really fun conversations that otherwise I wouldn't have a reason to ask somebody for otherwise, or they probably wouldn't have the time to otherwise. So yeah, it's been the most meaningful, I think, part of my career in a lot of ways, because it does feel like it's one of the more tangible things. It's easy in day-to-day work in CRM to not see the bigger picture and not see what you're contributing. But this podcast, and then having people tell me that it's a place where they, have finally found that community that they were looking for, or as an Indigenous student, they have people they can look up to because of it, or all of those moments where you hear how much it means to people, that it's nice to have something that feels a little bit more tangible. Like you can really see the impact, and it's fun. It's fun. So yeah, I would highly recommend podcasting.
This has been a presentation of the Archaeology Podcast Network. Visit us on the web for show notes and other podcasts at www.archpodnet.com. Contact us at chris@archaeologypodcastnetwork.com.
Thanks again for listening to this episode and for supporting the Archaeology Podcast Network. If you want these shows to keep going, consider becoming a member for just $7.99 US a month. That's cheaper than a venti quad eggnog latte. Go to archpodnet.com/members for more info.
Shop Plato's Closet tax-free August 2nd through 4th for back-to-school styles. We sell the trendy, gently used styles you need to make a difference in the world and in your wallet for back-to-school shopping. Save up to 70% off regular retail prices by choosing recycled styles. Save even more when you shop tax-free this weekend. Make a change that others can respect and repeat. Shop Plato's Closet in North Charleston and West Ashley this year for your back-to-school looks. Plato's Closet, located in West Ashley on Sam Rittenberg Boulevard and North Charleston on Rivers Avenue.